There is a quiet ache that comes with wanting to say no and hearing yourself say yes instead. It happens in small moments. A friend asks for a favor when you're already exhausted. A coworker shifts responsibility onto you. A family member crosses a line you've tried to gently hint at before. Inside, something tightens. You feel the weight of your own limits. You know you don't have the energy, time, or emotional capacity. And yet, almost automatically, you agree. Later, the resentment creeps in. So does the exhaustion. And beneath it all, a deeper question forms. Why is it so hard for me to say no? For many people, struggling to say no isn't about weakness. It isn't about being incapable of making decisions. It is rooted in something much deeper, a psychological pattern shaped by early attachment experiences, emotional conditioning, and a nervous system trained to associate boundaries with danger. As children, we learn what keeps us connected. If love and approval were tied to compliance, helpfulness, or emotional caretaking, we internalized a powerful message: being needed equals being valued. Saying no, disagreeing, or asserting limits may have led to withdrawal, criticism, or subtle disappointment. For a child, those reactions don't feel minor. They feel threatening. So the brain adapts. You learn to anticipate needs before they are spoken. You become highly attuned to shifts in tone, facial expressions, and emotional undercurrents. You discover that keeping others comfortable keeps you safe. Over time, this turns into a core belief. My worth is tied to how useful, agreeable, and accommodating I am. In adulthood, this belief can look like kindness. It can look like generosity. It can look like loyalty. And often, it is those things. But beneath it, there is usually anxiety. When someone asks something of you, your nervous system doesn't simply evaluate whether you have capacity. It scans for potential rejection. If I say no, will they be upset? Will they think I'm selfish? Will they withdraw? Will I lose connection? The guilt that follows boundary setting is not random. It is the emotional residue of a younger version of you who learned that limits jeopardized love. This is why the word no can feel physically uncomfortable. Your heart may race, your chest may tighten. You might over-explain, soften, apologize repeatedly, or immediately offer an alternative solution. Even when your boundary is reasonable, your body reacts as though you've done something wrong. Psychologically, this pattern is often rooted in anxious attachment or early emotional enmeshment. In enmeshed family systems, boundaries were blurred. You may have felt responsible for a parent's moods. You may have been praised for being mature or easy, which often meant suppressing your own needs. You may have become the mediator, the helper, the peacemaker. In those roles, saying no wasn't just inconvenient. It felt like betrayal. As an adult, this can show up in subtle but powerful ways. You agree to plans you dread. You tolerate behavior that drains you. You struggle to voice discomfort in relationships. You take on emotional labor without being asked. You find yourself overwhelmed but unable to pinpoint why. The resentment that builds afterward can be confusing. You might think, no one forced me. I chose this. And technically, that's true. But the choice wasn't made from a place of calm self-trust. It was made from fear. And fear-driven compliance has consequences. When you consistently override your own limits, you teach yourself that your needs are secondary. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You stop checking in with what you actually want. You become disconnected from your internal signals. Hunger, fatigue, frustration, overwhelm, because responding to them feels less urgent than responding to others. This is where burnout often begins, not from doing too much once, but from chronically saying yes when your body and mind are whispering no. There is also a deeper psychological cost: identity confusion. If you've built your self-image around being the reliable one, the helpful one, the strong one, it can feel destabilizing to set boundaries. Who am I if I'm not the person who always shows up? If I'm not the one who sacrifices, if I disappoint someone? Guilt fills that gap. Guilt, in this context, doesn't necessarily mean you've done something wrong. It often means you've violated an internalized rule, a rule that says your comfort comes last. The challenge is that this rule was never consciously chosen. it was absorbed. Many people who struggle with boundaries also experience heightened empathy. You can easily imagine how the other person will feel. You anticipate their disappointment. You empathize with their stress. This empathy is a strength, but when it overrides your own well-being, it becomes self-abandonment. You may notice patterns like you apologize before expressing a preference. You feel responsible for fixing other people's problems. You worry excessively about being perceived as rude or selfish. You replay conversations where you asserted yourself, searching for signs you did something wrong. This mental replay is your nervous system attempting to restore safety. It wants reassurance that connection is still intact. But here's the truth that can feel both uncomfortable and liberating. Healthy relationships can tolerate disappointment. If a relationship collapses because you said no once, it was not sustained by mutual respect. It was sustained by your overfunctioning. Boundaries do not destroy secure connections, they clarify them. When you begin practicing saying no, you may encounter resistance. Not because you're wrong, but because the dynamic is changing. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries may unconsciously push back. This can intensify your guilt. This is where self-awareness becomes crucial. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel so bad?" ask, "What old fear is being activated right now?" Often, it's the fear of abandonment, the fear of being seen as selfish, the fear of losing your role, the fear of not being needed. But being needed is not the same as being loved. Love that requires self-erasure is not secure love. Learning to say no begins with reconnecting to your internal cues. Before responding to a request, pause. Notice your body. Do you feel open or constricted? Calm or tense? Energized or depleted? This pause interrupts the automatic yes. Then comes the hardest part, tolerating the discomfort that follows. When you say, "I can't commit to that," or "I need some time to think," your nervous system may react as if you've stepped into danger. But over time, with repetition, your body learns that setting a boundary does not equal abandonment. It learns that discomfort is survivable. There is also a powerful shift that happens when you realize that every yes is a trade-off. When you say yes to something that drains you, you are saying no to your rest, your peace, your priorities. Boundaries are not walls, they are filters. They allow what aligns and protect what doesn't. And contrary to what guilt may tell you, setting a boundary is not an act of aggression, it is an act of self-respect. It may help to reframe guilt as growth pain. When you've spent years prioritizing others, prioritizing yourself will feel foreign. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. You can start small. Decline a minor request without over-explaining. Let a text go unanswered until you have the energy to respond. Say, "That doesn't work for me," without adding an apology. Notice the urge to justify, and gently resist it. Each small act builds internal trust. Over time, something shifts. The guilt doesn't disappear entirely, but it softens. You begin to experience a different emotion in its place: relief. Relief that you're no longer constantly overextended. Relief that your relationships feel more balanced. Relief that you are showing up by choice, not obligation. And interestingly, the relationships that are healthy will adapt. They may even deepen, because when you say yes after practicing boundaries, it comes from authenticity. It is not layered with resentment. It is clean. There will still be moments of doubt. Old patterns do not dissolve overnight, but each time you honor your limits, you send a message to yourself. My needs matter. That message rewires more than behavior. It reshapes identity. You are not selfish for having boundaries. You are not unkind for protecting your energy. You are not difficult for needing space. You are human. And humans have limits. The goal is not to become rigid or detached. It is to create a balance where empathy includes yourself, where kindness is mutual, where support flows both ways. If you've struggled to say no, understand this: you were trying to preserve connection. That instinct deserves compassion. But now you have the opportunity to build connections that do not require self-sacrifice as proof of love. The next time guilt rises after you set a boundary, instead of immediately undoing it, pause, breathe, Remind yourself that discomfort does not equal wrongdoing. Growth often feels like disobedience to your old conditioning. But on the other side of that discomfort is something steady and grounding, a sense of self that is not constantly negotiating its worth. You are allowed to take up space without earning it through exhaustion. You are allowed to protect your time without apology. You are allowed to say no and still be worthy of love. And with practice, the word no stops feeling like a threat. It begins to feel like clarity. And clarity is not cruel.